July 1944, Normandy, France. The fields south of St. Lo were no longer farmland, they were killing grounds. Private First Class Samuel Sam Donnelly of the U.S. 29th Infantry Division pressed his back against the thick earthen wall of a Norman hedgerow, heart pounding, as German machine gun fire cracked overhead. The men of Company F 116th Infantry Regiment had been fighting through the bocage for nearly 6 weeks. Since landing on Omaha Beach, they were exhausted, understrength, and dangerously low on support weapons. The hedgerows were their worst enemy. 10 feet high, reinforced by centuries of packed soil and tangled roots, they turned every field into a fortress. German troops of the 352nd Infantry Division had embedded MG-42 machine guns behind nearly every embankment. The weapon's rate of fire, 1,200 rounds per minute, sounded like canvas tearing in the sky. On July 16th, Company F had pushed too far ahead during a limited advance ordered by V Corps. Their 60mm M2 mortar team, carrying the essential indirect fire support, had been hit by artillery. The tube was shattered, the bipod twisted into scrap, 2 men dead. Without mortar fire, they were blind to enemies hiding just beyond the hedgerow line. Captain Harold Jennings understood the stakes. German observers were spotted 300 yards east, likely preparing a counterattack. Radio contact with battalion headquarters was unreliable. The SCR-300 backpack set hissed with static. By mid-afternoon, enemy mortar rounds, likely from a 50mm Granatorfer 36, began dropping behind their lines. Dirt showered down. A runner reported that 2nd Platoon had lost 3 men and was nearly out of fragmentation grenades. Fear gripped the company. The Germans were probing, testing for weakness. That was when Sergeant William Bill Harkins spoke up. Before the war, Harkins had been a pipe fitter in Pittsburgh, working steel in industrial yards. Now crouched in a foxhole, he studied a pile of discarded farm equipment near a ruined barn. Among it were lengths of thick irrigation pipe, galvanized steel roughly 2 inches in diameter. Sir, he told Captain Jennings quietly, I think we can build something. Jennings frowned. Build what, Sergeant? A mortar. The idea was dangerous. Improvised weapons were unpredictable, but Harkins reasoned that if they could secure one end of the pipe, brace it at a steep angle, and use salvaged 60mm mortar shells recovered from the damaged team's supplies, they might be able to create a crude smoothbore launcher. There were risks. If the pipe burst, it would send steel fragments into their own ranks, but without indirect fire, they would be overrun. As dusk settled over the Norman countryside, 3 men slipped to the barn. They dragged back 2 6-foot lengths of pipe and heavy iron fittings. Working under fading light, they dug a shallow pit to brace the base. Sandbags were stacked around it. A steel bolt was hammered into place at the bottom to serve as a fixed firing pin. The principle was simple: drop the round, it strikes the firing pin, ignition, launch. But theory and survival were different things. By 2,100 hours, the Germans began firing flares into the sky. Shadows leapt across the hedgerows. Movement was visible just 200 yards away. Captain Jennings gave a single order: prepare to fire. The men stepped back. Silence hung in the air. Sergeant Harkins lowered the first mortar round into the pipe. For a split second, nothing happened. Then came a metallic clang, followed by a thunderous blast. The shell arced high into the dark sky. 3 seconds later, an explosion erupted behind the German hedgerow. The impossible had just become real. The first explosion stunned both sides for a moment. Even the Germans hesitated. They had not expected mortar fire from that sector. Sergeant Harkins wasted no time. Just 10 degrees left, he muttered, listening for echoes. Judging distance by sound alone, there were no sights, no baseplate, only instinct and desperation. Private Donnelly helped steady the pipe as the second round slid down. Another boom, another explosion, closer this time. German shouts cut through the night. By 2,200 hours, the counterattack began in full force. Approximately 70 infantrymen from Grenadier Regiment 915 surged forward in coordinated rushes. MG-42 tracers stitched the air in violent red streaks. Company F answered with M1 Garand and Browning automatic rifles. But it was the improvised mortar that made the difference. Round after round was dropped into the pipe. Each detonation echoed across the fields. Dirt and smoke erupted behind enemy lines. The Germans, believing they faced a reinforced position with intact artillery support, slowed their advance, but danger lurked closer to home. On the 7th shot, the pipe emitted a shrill metallic whine. The steel had begun to warp under repeated blasts. Heat shimmered along its surface. Let it cool, Jennings ordered. They waited 30 agonizing seconds as bullets snapped through leaves overhead. The Germans closed to within 150 yards. Fear tightened in Donnelly's chest. He could see helmet silhouettes against the hedgerow gap. If they broke through, it would be hand-to-hand fighting. "Fire," Jennings said quietly. Harkins nodded. Another round dropped. Boom. This one detonated directly among a cluster of advancing infantry. The blast threw bodies sideways. The attack faltered. For 3 brutal hours, the fighting continued. The Americans fired nearly 25 improvised rounds. Several misfired shells had to be carefully extracted, each attempt risking catastrophic detonation. Little did they know that German commanders were reporting to division headquarters that they had encountered unexpected American mortar strength in the sector. The illusion of superior firepower had taken hold. At 0100 hours, artillery from the U.S. 111th Field Artillery Battalion finally found the range. 105mm shells screamed overhead, crashing into German assembly areas. The counterattack dissolved. Dawn revealed the cost. 6 men from Company F lay dead. 15 were wounded. German casualties, based on battlefield assessment, numbered at least 25 killed and many more injured. The crossroads remained in American hands. When battalion officers inspected the position later that morning, they found the warped, blackened pipe still braced in its pit, smoking slightly in the cool air. Sergeant Harkins was recommended for the Bronze Star Medal for initiative and conspicuous gallantry under fire. Captain Jennings' after-action report noted the improvised weapon as a decisive factor in repelling the enemy assault. The device was never standardized, IT was never issued by the Ordnance Department. But in the crucible of Normandy, civilian skill and sheer determination had filled the gap left by shattered equipment. What happened that night did not alter the grand strategy of Operation Cobra. It did not change the outcome of the war. But for the men who survived those hedgerows, it meant everything. Against impossible odds, with nothing but scrap steel and courage, they had created firepower where none existed. And in doing so, they proved a simple truth of the Second World War. Victory was not forged by factories alone. Sometimes, it was forged by the hands of ordinary soldiers in the dark.